I'll just ask one follow-up question to that. What if you gave the example of people who are part of the church? You gave the example of a well-known person from outside the church. What if it's a stranger? What if it's somebody that you don't know, and he comes in and he'd like to teach? Maybe he's a friend of somebody's, but you don't really know him.
Well, I think because wisdom is proved right by her children, there would instantly enter into people's minds, and Jesus said that's some of his last words. Because that's true, there'd be some inner gnawing, I think, if it was somebody just totally out of the clear blue. I wonder who this person is. I wonder what their babies are. If wisdom is proved right by their children, okay, what this person is saying, I want to test it. I have to test it. 1 Corinthians 14 also speaks of testing those 2 or 3 things that are brought in. And so, particularly the testing would need to take place when we don't really know. This guy might be a serial murderer. He might have destroyed the last 10 bodies of believers that he's ever been a part of in his lifetime. He might be a wife beater, might be on his 4th wife. There could be all kinds of things in his background. He might have stayed up all night watching crummy videos before he showed up. I mean, if you don't know anything relationally about who they are, then certainly, if we don't know their children, we have to ask a question about their wisdom. Is the wisdom from above, or is it wisdom from below? We don't necessarily know, but the ability of that person to, in humility, to say, I know you guys don't know me. Now, if he comes off pompously, you already know something about him. But if in humility, Paul said you look at Paul's life, right? I mean, he's caught up in the 3rd heaven. The guy knows what he's talking about. He's seen men raised from the dead. His handkerchief has brought healing to people's lives. He knows what's going on. He's seen a vision from heaven, revelation abounding. I mean, he's seen the authentic work of God in his life and those around him. And he said, when I went to Judea, hey, they didn't count me as an apostle. They counted me as a persecutor that's now been converted. And eventually, after talking to Peter and the other brothers, he extended to me the right hand of fellowship, and he said, okay, you're an apostle to the Gentiles, and I'll be apostle to the Jews. And they had a good working relationship, but he said I was unknown to the brothers in Judea. I didn't come in as somebody that was supposed to be important and to puff myself up. And even to the Corinthian church, he said, I may not be an apostle to anyone else, but surely I am to you. Look at your lives. See if Christ is in you. Chapter 13, he said, see if the Spirit of God lives in you. And if so, then we've passed the test. You need to be able to listen to us if you've seen the fruit in our lives. And so, the issue is very important that Paul was able to look at the whole thing organically and be able to talk to people in that vein of, I don't have to be somebody. You can look at my life. We can work through this thing. He approached them as a child would approach. When he wrote to the Galatians, he didn't say, I'm a big boss. You guys need to do what I say. I've been caught up in 3rd heaven. He didn't pull out his pedigree and wave it in front of people or trying to impress people. He approached them in appealing on the basis of truth, as a father with children, or as a long-lost brother, or as a stranger with some words of encouragement. But the appeal was from the heart to the heart. It wasn't flashing around his diploma or his credentials or anything like that. So I think if we were going to another assembly someplace else, or somebody was coming in with us, it would be very appropriate as a stranger to talk about it in those terms. Look, I don't know you, you don't know me. I don't expect you to bow down in front of me just because of a reputation or something. I don't want any reputation other than the things you see in me, is what Paul said. I don't need any reputation. But if you'll listen to these things, and if you weigh them, if you'll test the fruit of them, then I think you'll see there's profit in it, that it's Jesus' word. He didn't wave something in front of him and demand anything. And so if a visitor came in from the outside, we knew nothing of his life or the fruit of his life, I think it'd be fair that he could approach a body of believers that he doesn't know, and he knows they don't know. If he understands truth, that wisdom is proved right by her children, he'll know that they don't know the children. And so that they shouldn't expect them to just roll over and be excited about his reputation and all that kind of stuff. He's going to approach you with humility. Say, weigh these things, guys. You don't know me, but weigh them. See if they'll work in your life. See if it's really what God said. Test them. See if they're approved by God. But work them. Find out if these things are true. So there's very much a place for even a total stranger, but you'd like to think that the heart would be right more than likely as he'd approach the whole thing.
Next, would it be appropriate to invite a well-known or particularly gifted person to speak at a conference, in quotations?
Well, we've had a number of well-known and gifted men in our midst. It's always just a little bit awkward with us because they are, for the most part, familiar with the pattern of coming in, giving a sermon, lesson, teaching, preaching thing, and then leaving. And see, we don't work that way anymore. And so, oftentimes, as we bring teaching, it's in the midst as one who serves, and that's really not where they're coming from or what they're familiar with, and that's okay for this era in the body of Christ. Just most people are not familiar with anything other than the standard thing. You have a Sunday morning service, you have gifted people that travel around and pop in, pop out, pop in, pop out, and you have music thing and a preaching thing and whatever, pop in, pop out, special guest appearance by. It's like that's basically the way it's all set up, and that's all most anybody's familiar with. Ideally, in the years to come, it'll be out of relationship in the midst of one who serves. Brother will come in and he'll watch, he'll listen, he'll be part of the gathering as a brother, not a leader, a master, teacher, rabbi, father. But as a brother, he'll come in gathering around Jesus, not people gathering around him to listen to his music gift or listen to his teaching gift, but people gathering around Jesus, and he's right there with them, gathering around Jesus. And if something touches a nerve in him, not because he's a star, but because he's a brother, and it's touched something in him, it's hit that resonant frequency inside of his heart, and out of his gift, then he begins to teach, or music begins to come. Now that's God's best and highest way for the body of Christ to relate, without anybody's face on a poster or any special guest star kind of thing, special holidays bringing big crowds or special speakers bringing big crowds. But we're gathering around Jesus, and he's the guest that deserves the big crowds, period. There is one, and his name is Jesus, and that's really the way we need to function. Is there a place for inviting a well-known gifted guy to be in the midst as one who serves? Absolutely. For a conference with a lineup of big known speakers and music artists or whatever, the day's got to come to an end where Jesus is dishonored by being usurped in that way. Maybe Brother B or Brother C should be teaching at 9 o'clock for 4 hours instead of having to meet his deadline and finish the task at some certain kind of time in order to make sure Brother E and F get to speak, and maybe it's Brother Q out in the so-called audience that really God's calling to speak to all of his people, but who would know that because the spotlights are on the stage and the announcement's already been made and the lineup's in the thing that's been sent out and so on and so forth. Because we're not gathering around Jesus, the Spirit of God is usurped time and time and time again. So, God gets some good out of it. God gets some good out of everything, but it is not his way. It's Ishmael and not Isaac. Feelings get hurt, greed and power and other sorts of things begin to work its way in to the whole thing, and you don't even know what you have after a while. The child born in the logical way, and that's the logical way. Conferences, speakers, that's how IBM does it. That's how Rand McNally does it. That's how everybody in the world does their thing. That's the logic of this world, and it's not from God, and it births Ishmael, not Isaac. So, yeah, God gets good at it, great, but I think we can go on, surely.